Got it. We'll call the meeting to order. Grand Haven Board of Light and Power, Thursday, May 20 at 4 o'clock, approximately. And we'll begin with a call to order.
Director Crum?
Here.
Director Keefe?
Here.
Director Nasser?
Here.
Director Witherell?
Here.
Chairperson Samant?
Here. We have no members to excuse, so we will move to item number 2, which is approve the meeting agenda. Motion is in order. Support? Okay. Comments or questions? Hearing none. Do you want a roll call? No. Okay, all in favor say aye.
I actually believe it's kind of a moot point at this point in time, but because we're all in the room together, but actually because it's a remote meeting, the remote meeting rules require a voice vote.
Okay.
Director Crum?
Yes.
Director Keefe?
Yes.
Director Nasser?
Yes.
Director Witherell?
Yes.
Chairperson Samant?
Yes. Next item is public comment.
Consent agenda. You have to approve the consent agenda.
I'm sorry. Do I have a motion for the consent? So moved. Support?
Support.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Carries.
Director Crum?
Yes.
Director Keefe? Director Nasser?
Yes.
Director Witherell?
Yes.
Chairperson Samant?
Yes. You're trying to confuse me. Next item is public comment period.
For those of you on Zoom, if you'd like to make a public comment, please use the raise your hand feature in the Zoom meeting, the raise your hand feature through Zoom, please.
Seeing no hands being raised, we'll move on with our agenda items. General Manager's report.
Item 5A includes 7 purchase orders in excess of $5,000. I think the descriptions on the agenda adequately, suggest what each one of them is. I'd be happy to answer any questions, but staff is recommending approval in total.
That's 1 through 7, right?
Correct.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Comments or questions? Please call the roll.
Director Crum?
Yes.
Director Keefe?
Yes.
Director Nasser?
Yes.
Director Witherell?
Yes.
Chairperson Samant?
Yes. Next item is item B under 5, which is turn the meeting over to Dave.
Item 5B1, approval of the recommended electric rate revisions effective July 1. In your packet, you had revisions to page, I believe it was 45 through 68, I think it was. 68, yes. 45 through 68 of our distribution rules that you've approved previously. In red is the changes associated with the rate adjustments that we had talked about over our last 2 work sessions. I believe we have encapsulated them as the way that was directed at the last meeting to do. So with that, I would recommend its approval.
Okay, the floor is open for comments or questions. All in favor?
Don't you,
Go ahead.
don't you need to have the motion on the floor before we have comments, Jack?
Yes.
I'll make the motion.
Okay. Go ahead, John.
First, I have some questions about the resident article on residential service that was included in our packet. On page 62, and it's talking about snow melt on page 62. And is this direction should be directed probably to you, Dave. If I look at section 21.04, item B, electrical energy charge, would that be for the energy to run the pumps? Is that what that's for?
Yes. So we had this language, the only thing we changed again is in the red. All right. So the black was all there before. Now, I've kind of taken some liberties here because we have not yet negotiated the contract with the city. So I'm assuming this is what we're going to agree to, but what we did is we actually reduced the electrical energy charge approximately 5%, consistent with the 5% reduction in all commercial industrial rates. And then we charged them the minimum service charge of $37.50. All right, so that's the minimum commercial industrial service charge. Now they previously we only charged them an amount. I think it was the $25. That's why I changed it to $37.50, which is consistent with the changes that we made to other general secondary. But we only charged it during the applicable months because the service to the building was actually, it was just a sub meter off from the Sims plant. Now it's the only service there. So we began a new service and we put them on the general secondary rate. And then we just lowered the electrical charge. It was 9 cents. So we charged them 8 cents. And the idea there was just to recover our costs. We're not trying to make any money there. We're just recovering our costs. And then the same thing with the natural gas usage. We're just charging them what we get billed. So they pay all the costs associated with operating that building. And then we do need to, item D is important there. And I think we do need all other operating costs and capital recovery costs shall be billed in accordance with an applicable contract with the city, which we don't have yet. So we do have to begin those discussions so that we know, how those capital recovery and other operating costs are going to be recovered.
Okay, another question for you, Dave, on page 67. And this is the net metering section. If I look at section 23.07, item C, parenthesis 2, down at the bottom, says any remaining unused kilowatt hour credit accumulated by the customer during the billing period. This would be remaining after you charged it on the next bill. Shall be granted to the BLP. Now, has this always been the provision that my interpretation is if somebody is generating more power than they need, and when you bill it in the following bill, if it isn't completely consumed, then the BLP gets it for no cost? Is that new or has that always been that way?
Let me address it, and then I'll have Rob, because this is Rob's expertise here. But my understanding is that what we do is we credit the next.
Right.
We give them a month to carry over. All right. Once it's what they'll do then potentially is that they'll be credited this on their next month's bill, and then their next month, if they have any excess, will get credited to the following month. All right. And you'll just keep riding it back a month until you get to the point where you can no longer take the credit the next month. So it's not immediate. And quite frankly, most people don't go in excess of their existing. I don't even know if this provision applies to anybody, because most people do not go over their monthly bill twice, all right, in generation. They might get just a little bit on the next one, but I don't think this is a big factor, and I don't know if we've ever implemented this, but I think it could take several months to actually implement it, given the fact that you can keep rolling over the existing month to the next month, and you take, as long as you take the previous month first, then you're always gonna have this rolling type, is this correct? So I don't think it's a problem, but yeah, this has not changed. And the idea here is in commercial industrial, we actually pay them for all the kilowatt hours at a given rate. The residential are actually offsetting their retail rate, which is a huge benefit. So
If a commercial, let's say if an industrial company built a system that generated more than it needed, though, we can't really describe what we're doing as reverse metering, because beyond a given point, they're not going to get paid for any excess.
no, that's
Correct?
No, the item, correct me if I'm wrong, Rob, but the item the item 27307C applies to residential customers. Am I correct? Well, the
Doesn't say
commercial
that.
customers are paid in accordance with 2306, aren't they?
The credit, as it talks about there, applies to everyone. It's not talking about the rate is talking about. The rate is up on 2306 monthly credits. 2307 is what we do or how it's booked.
Okay, all right, I see.
Okay, that answers my question, and I just would hope that in the future, we might consider not, it opens the door to the possibility as more and more people install solar, that in the future, we might be getting free solar if it exceeds what they're using in the next month. And it would be good if we're going to get solar
Let me
back, that we would pay for it.
Yeah, I think, I
Or
mean,
deduct it
I
from what
understand
they
what you're saying. I think the goal of this provision, and I don't know if it still exists or the board doesn't want it or not, but the goal of this provision is to try to get people to not oversize and feed back into the system. We really don't want that, all right? We really want systems to be sized appropriately to use the power, particularly in the summer months, because if it's sized appropriately in the summer months, they're not going to have near enough in the winter months. So this provision would never apply. But the goal was never to, particularly at the rates that we're paying for residential usage today, is buy the power back from them, because it's not a deal. All right. The other customers are actually paying this cost because it's higher than the cost that we pay for power from other sources. So this provision has to be changed if we want to encourage people to sell back to the utility. We should then only pay what our costs are for alternatives. You want to add anything to that? So that's, I mean, the goal here is not to buy our power from our customers at a high price. Have our other customers buy that power from them at a high price when we could buy it from others cheaper. So I think that's what this provision was trying to prevent happening to an excessive level. At some level, we said, hey, it's fine.
Rob, you want to add?
To answer your two questions, John, first is this provision has always been there, so it's not new. Secondly, how this system is calculated is you use last month's credit on the next bill. And then it continues to roll. We do not track monthly credits independently. So it continues to roll and roll and roll and roll. Because you're going to use your first credit before you get your new credit. So it just continues to roll. That's how our system is set up. To answer the second point is right now, we do not have anybody that is running into this issue when you look at it over a long, multiple month period where they're losing anything they're selling back to us. So at this point, this provision is there, but it's not being implemented because we don't have it. To your point, could it happen if someone was big enough? I will tell you from the developers, people trying to develop, like Dave's point is they try to size it for your usage. That is the most efficient way to design your system for your home use or commercial use. So if you go out and meet with a solar panel provider or an installer, that is their goal, is to size it to your usage. And that's the most efficient, cost-effective way for a customer to install a solar system.
I understand that, but what I'm suggesting to you is that if a residential customer 2 months in a row happened to use nowhere near as much electricity as they normally would if they're away on vacation or whatever, okay, and their system is running and is generating power and is providing it back through the system, then if the difference is large enough, they're going to end up providing some power to the BOP that the BOP will not be paying for. That can happen the way this is written. That's all I'm saying.
It can happen the way it's written, and what I'm telling you is it doesn't happen.
Well,
And it's
guess what?
the-
We're in a technology age where in the future it may happen. I have a few more comments, Jack. I want to get off of this, not waste any more time on it. At our last work session, I asked the board to consider leaving the residential rates, the monthly facility charge and the monthly energy charge, the way they were, where they are right now. And the majority of the board said they weren't interested. I'm going to be voting against the use of the new rates for that very reason. What it comes down to for me is there's a large group of regular residential customers and a large group of seniors who, with these new rates, even though the monthly facility charge for seniors is going to be knocked down to $10, from 15 down to 10 instead of 11. There's a large group of these people that are going to be, for a given amount of kilowatt hours, are going to be paying more money. In fact, when you look at the regular customers, 59% of them, that's 6,856 people, or customer accounts, will see an increase. And as far as the seniors go, 48%. 48% of the 1,282 means 48%, 615 of them will see an increase. Overall, for the residential group, 58%, 12,903, 58% of that, or 7,471 customers in the residential category will see an increase because of these rates that are being imposed. I don't think that it's right. I think that it's a mistake to do it. I can't support it. And oh, by the way, I think the BOP needs to be very careful in the future what they say about rates. I'm looking at the plugged in piece for May and June of 2021 that was sent out. It says this: Grand Haven Board of Light and Power lowered customer electric rates by 6% over 2016-2017 and has committed to maintaining rates constant throughout this transition. You really can't say that when you got 7,471 residents who are going to see higher, having to pay more for the same amount of kilowatt hours.
John, I appreciate your comments, but what we said in there is exactly correct. And if you actually look at residential decreases, where we say there it's a 6% overall decrease, actually it's a 10% residential decrease over that period of time.
Yeah, I'm not
And there
arguing with
there
that.
is no customers in the residential population that saw less than a 10%, or excuse me, less than a 6%. So yes, some people received more than 6%. Not very many residential customers received less than 6%, while a lot of commercial industrial customers did receive less than 6%. So the residential population, more than anyone, has benefited over the last 6 years. And there
I'm
is
not arguing
no
with the
one that,
6%.
so
I'm
so your
arguing-
suggestion was is that they didn't see that decrease, and they did. All
I'm-
residential customers saw that decrease.
I'm arguing about the word constant. Rates, maintaining rates constant. That's what I'm arguing, Dave. We're not doing that. I can't use that terminology in the future.
Any other
That's it,
comments?
Jack.
Any other comments from any of the board members? Okay, we have the motion. Call the roll, please.
Director Crum, Director Keefe,
Yes.
Director Nasser,
No.
Director Witherell,
Yes.
Chairperson Smant.
Yes, motion carries. We move on to number 2.
Next item on the agenda is the approval of the union contract extension agreement to June 30, 2022. You have before you it's a single-page agreement with the signature page. Well, it's two-page short extension agreement, which basically suggests that the contract will be extended for one year with a 3% wage increase effective on June 1 of this year.
I make the motion.
I'll second.
Hearing none, please call the roll.
Director Crum,
Yes.
Director Keefe, Director Nasser,
Yes.
Director Witherell,
Yes.
Chairperson Smant.
Yes, carries. Next item.
Okay, both of those items have been rolled into the fiscal year 2022 budget. We actually did not change the revenues as a result of the change that we made with the adjustments. We think that that's going to be about $150,000 in total, the adjustments to the residential senior citizen and the fixed charges. So we just left the revenues the same. It's well within the accuracy of those projections. And hopefully we'll see that be passed through right to the bottom line, but it doesn't change our expenses or anything. So we just left the budget the same so that we wouldn't have to discuss a bunch of changes and that sort of thing. So we have made no changes in the budget since it was originally presented last month. Or actually, since it was originally presented on your first work study, that we did make some changes on.
Yeah.
I make the motion.
Comments or questions from the board? Please call the roll.
Wait a minute.
Oh,
I struggled with this, Jack, because the revenue involves the increase for a large percentage of residential customers, but I understand the need to have a budget, and because we're up against the timeline, we have to approve something. So I'm gonna vote for this, but I'm not happy about it because of the residential revenue.
okay. Any other comments? Please call the roll.
Director Crum,
Yes.
Director Keefe, Director Nasser,
Yes.
Director Witherell,
Yes.
Chairperson Smant.
Yes, motion carries. Next item.
The next item is approving the 5-year capital plan and large non-operating expense plan. Again, this too was given to you in April. We discussed it a bit at both work sessions, and there have been no changes made to it in the last month.
I'll make the motion.
Floor is open for discussion. Please call the roll. Oh, you
Jesus.
gotta be quicker, John.
I was able to vote for the operating budget for next year, but I will not support this capital plan as long as it includes over $17 million for building and facilities on Harbor Island that have yet to receive final approval. Shouldn't be in here. You can always change the 5-year plan once the plan is finalized. But to approve a plan that's got that in there when there's so much dissension and difference of opinion in the community about it would be a thumb in the eye to the citizens of our community. Can't vote for it.
Other comments? Please call the roll.
Director Crum,
Yes.
Director Keefe,
No.
Director Nasser,
No.
Director Witherell,
Yes.
Chairperson Smant,
Yes. Motion carries. Next item.
This item is I broached the subject at the last meeting. I wasn't sure when it would be coming. MPPA has been working with several solar developers, and they still have more solar developers that they're working with on future contracts. But they have now brought to the MPPA board, and the MPPA board did approve at its last meeting, signing contracts with 2 solar developers. And then they have assessed kind of an allocation of those solar assets to the members. And what you see here before you, how this works is, again, MPPA signs the contract with the solar developers, and then the power purchase commitment, or PPC, is authorized by the individual cities. So MPPA's approval of the contracts is contingent on MPPA getting these authorizations from the applicable members to buy the power. If they don't get them, or they will reallocate the power and then give it to someone else. And I think in this particular instance, you're going to find there's more people or more members than there are power to divide. This is by far the best solar contract that we had. They get better every year, so we anticipate that the ones next year will be better than this one. But this is actually a fixed 20-year contract, no escalation, at 42.10 and 42.16. Or excuse me, 42.10 and 42.65. So in that $42 range, that includes all the RECs, all the energy, and all of the capacity that may come with the unit. So that's a very attractive price. I commend MPPA for continuing to do this on our behalf, and it'll continue. But I think this will. I'd also included in your packet an estimate, a conservative estimate on where our renewable purchases are going in the next several years as these 2, as well as the previous 3 solar contracts that we have, are rolled in. And you'll see by the end of 2024, we will be almost 28.4% renewable. And I anticipate that there will be more solar contracts coming. MPPA is working on several others in the next few years after that. So I think we'll continue to see that increase. And I think this is good news for those that are desirous of MPPA and Grand Haven Board of Light and Power producing more and more renewable and getting a higher and higher percentage. These are by far, and I've talked to several local solar developers as well, there's no way that any home system or even a large system on a large factory would even touch these particular types of costs to us. So we think it's very attractive and it's very worthwhile to pursue. You'll see that again, the 2 of the projects. This is the second project, this Savion project, which is actually a joint project with DTE, is in Calhoun County, and then the CMS project is in Hart. Is just north of us here and adjacent to Hart. So
I think that's Oceana County.
Oceana County, correct. So I've been waiting for two of these to kind of compare. The CMS project and along the lakeshore here is a bit less in output on a per megawatt basis. And I think that's reflective of the closeness to the lakeshore and their estimates of, the cloud cover that we have in the wintertime. But the price is actually lower on the CMS contract. So even though it's not going to produce as much as the other one, both of them are very attractive from a cost per megawatt basis. And obviously with the solar, we take every megawatt hour that's produced. We don't, even if we built our own generation, none of our generation would compete with these. These essentially dispatch at zero because it's a fixed cost contract. So very attractive, and we recommend both MPPA and staff recommend your approval of this authorization.
Okay.
I'll make the motion.
Do we need two motions? You have two contracts?
Yeah, maybe
Okay.
separately.
We'll make
I
the
would
first one for,
for the Calhoun County Solar PPA, which would be the I don't know. I guess they're both labeled. How can I distinguish them on the front page?
The one for 2.2 megawatts.
2.2 megawatts first, and that's the Savion project.
We open the questions, Jack?
open for question.
Dave, what, pardon my ignorance on this, but are we, if we sign these contracts, and they're forecasting, for instance, for the Calhoun County one, the 2.2 megawatts, that they're forecasting that we would be committed financially to 3.8 million. Does that number, is that apply to the cost of the energy when we buy it? Or does it apply to the cost of capacity that we have to have, or is it both?
Okay, so this is what I was talking about earlier. So in this particular one, this is the contract for 4265. So it's 4265 per megawatt hour produced. All right. If it doesn't produce, you don't buy it. All right. So the risk is all with the supplier. Now, for the 4265, you get the energy when it's produced, you get delivered at the bus bar at that site. All right. So there is some risk between the energy cost that you sell it for at the bus bar, because what we do with these resources, just so everyone knows, is we buy the power, we sell it at the bus bar, and then we buy the power at the MPPA commercial pricing node. All right. So as long as there's not a big difference between the point of delivery and the point of extraction, financially, you'll pay 4265. All right. So, but to answer your, but to answer your question is, how that $3,865,000 was determined is they looked at their anticipated output over 20 years, multiplied it by 4265 and got that number. Okay. So that includes the price of any capacity that you get out of the unit, any energy you get out of the unit, and any RECs are all delivered for that price.
If we sign this, do we get credit for 2.2 megawatts for 20 years of capacity?
No,
We don't?
no, we do
So
not.
we have to buy the 2.2 in addition?
So right now, so what happens, it's the same thing that happens with our diesel plant or anything that doesn't perform in the capacity market. So what MISO has done is they have become more and more strict over what they give capacity for, all right? So what they do is they look at the past year for a class average. And what we're seeing is right now for the system peak, the solar output the facilities that are putting out power during the MISO peak is about 50%. So we get 50% of that capacity. All right. So in that we get that delivered. Now, there is no guarantees, and what MPPA has done in their evaluation of this is they actually expect, as more and more solar gets put on the system, what's going to happen is that peak is going to shift the net peak between other production and solar, it's going to shift towards the nighttime hours. All right. Because so that 50% is likely to go down.
But taking it as it is right now, for these two contracts, a total of 6.5 megawatts, would we get credit for 3.2 megawatts?
Today we would, yes.
I mean, they won't try, that would be assigned for 20 years out for us.
Yes, yeah.
Just like the 12.5 would be assigned if we build it. This would be in place for 20 years.
Yes.
Okay. So this contract really doesn't, it does pay for the 3.2 megawatt capacity for 20 years?
What I
As
said is
well
it will pay for the 3.2 megawatts of capacity as long as MISO allocates 50%
Yeah,
capacity.
yeah,
Now
okay.
they could actually change that next year, all
Okay,
right?
but
So,
it- but
and it's
the-
the same thing with our Sims plan. Is what they did is when Sims plant wasn't performing quite so well, they started nicking us on an outage rate, all right? It's the same type of concept. Is if your unit isn't producing on peak, then it potentially could get nicked for less capacity.
Okay, so put a lot of stipulations in here. If 50% continues to be the proper percentage and they have calculated right what it's going to cost them to produce a kilowatt hour, the approximately $11 million that it's forecasted that we would be responsible for would cover the capacity and the cost of the power. And just one more thing. And so if it does, when do we pay the 11 million? Do we pay it year by year or what?
Right. So what you're going to pay is in this particular contract, $42.65 per megawatt. Whenever it's producing a megawatt, and if it doesn't produce what's estimated over the life, then you'll pay less because you will use less. All right.
But if we can't,
Whatever capacity is allowed and whatever RECs are produced by these units come with the energy for free. So there is no charge for the capacity and there is no charge for the REC. It comes for that price. But you're going to pay $42.65 per megawatt hour. All right.
okay, and if we can't use it, then our option is to resell it. I take it. We have to take it. Right?
You would, like I said, you're going to buy this every kilowatt hour and you're going to sell it immediately at the bus bar. That's what's going to happen. And then whether we buy something in its place or not is going to depend on whether we need power or not. So this is an on-peak hedge as well. All right. So it's actually, solar is going to be produced on peak. All right. So you're getting this power. And if you're, not needing it in a particular hour, then it gets sold just like anything else. If you are going to use it, then we would sell it at the bus bar, buy it over here. So either way, you're going to probably sell this output and buy at our commercial pricing node. Does that make sense? I'm not trying to make it overcomplicated, but you're gonna buy this whenever it's available, and you're going to blend it in with your balancing energy that you buy from the marketplace.
So just to finish this conversation, the forecast is for roughly $11 million. If we divided that by 20 for 20 years, that is approximately what we can anticipate paying for the energy, which covers the capacity for right now 50% of the 6.5.
Yep.
All right.
And the renewable energy credits, which aren't worth a lot right now, but you're actually buying this primarily because of its renewable energy credit. So you're getting that as well. So that the combination of the revenue stream from the energy, the capacity, and the renewable energy credit, the combination of the three for this price is very, very competitive, right? So that's, so I think that's good. You're right, John, what John is right, the two contracts together are $10,979,000, which is $548,000 a year. Now, what will likely happen is that will fluctuate given the sun intensity in a given year and in the capacity. So some years you might have more, some years you might have less. And what does happen with these panels over the life is they do degrade as well. So that's all been assumed in that. So it's not going to be exactly that average.
But that's what you'd budget?
Yeah, I mean,
Annually?
we've budgeted for next year that amount, and it will probably go down a little bit over time. But yeah, it'll actually be probably above that next year when we actually do the calculation.
Larry?
MISO grants 50% of the, toward the capacity factor of the total megawatts purchase on solar. What does MISO say about landfill gas? What do they say about wind currently?
So wind is 15% currently. 15. All right, and that makes sense in that, wind is not probably blowing very hard on that 90-degree day, and that's a system-wide average. So you might not have them spending it all in Michigan, and they're giving those units in Michigan credit, even though the wind might be blowing out in Iowa. All right, so they kind of give a system-wide average, right. And that's what they do with solar now too. Now everybody's saying that solar, because everybody is putting in solar right now. So what you're going to see is that peak, like in California and other places, it shifts. The peak is going, the need for power, that peak hour that you need the power is going to shift towards the evening hours as more and more solar comes on. And they don't, and particularly in those ramp periods where the sun is going down, there's really a real drop in energy production, and they can't bring on the units quick enough. So that's really where we feel that this unit that we have, or batteries will help in that as well.
How about landfill gas? Where is that?
But landfill gas is pretty close to, they give you pretty close to 100% capacity on that.
The other question I have is, what are our transmission charges on all these different contracts? How does that get figured?
Okay, so
They come from different sources. And
So
different
transmission, when we shift to network transmission, we don't pay. It has no bearing at all.
It doesn't.
On where you get the power.
Okay.
If it's, as long as it's on the network, it's a network resource. Now, if you buy from a resource, some of our landfill gas units are kind of buried in like Consumers Energy system, or some of our municipal members are actually into a lower, we're connected at a high voltage. Right. So as long as we're connected at that high voltage and the units are connected at that high voltage, we shouldn't have to pay any additional charges.
So it's not something we should be concerned about.
It takes transmission, network transmission is the same no matter where you buy it. So it takes that calculation that we used to worry about a lot, right? Because SIMS was there and we were actually offsetting transmission. We were running SIMS. Now it makes no difference. If we run our unit here locally, we're gonna have to add that back in. And so we will get no transmission credit for that unit running right here in town. We will actually have to pay just as much for the transmission system. And that's, in essence, the rule is loads pay, generators don't pay. So loads pay for all of the system. They just divvy it up based on your load. And that's how network transmission is spread. Does that make sense?
Yep.
One more, Jack. Dave, when we look at your spreadsheet here of the various types of energy, what the column that's capacity factor, what is that percentage?
Okay, let me, so that is different, right? Let me pull it up here.
That's not the allowable capacity by MISO, right?
That has nothing to do with the capacity payment or credit that you receive from the unit. What that is essentially a utilization of the capacity that you install. So if you install 4.68 megawatts, built into these contracts, and I'm just looking at assembly one there, built into that contract is an assumption on how much that 4.68 megawatts will produce, with 100% being 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. All right.
So it'll produce 21.5%
of that 100%.
4.68?
Yeah, of that 4.68 multiply in megawatt hours. All right. So if you wanted to know the 100% capacity of that unit, you'd take the 4.68 times 100% times 24 hours a day times 365 days in the year. All right. So that would be the 100% capacity factor. Now, what what they do is they do some intensity tests in the particular panels. Some panels produce better than others. So this number is the number that they have calculated, i.e. the solar producer has calculated as they believe their unit will put out these various amounts. Now, as we get further and further in time, you see that these numbers are getting higher because solar capacity panels, the actual output of the panel does better and better every year. All right. So you're seeing that go up every year. You know, the Savion and the CMS one, I think that one's down simply because it's along the lake shore and it's not as high. Now this 22 and 20 were actually lower than the numbers that we received when we actually signed the contract. So I think actually the Savion is like 20. I think it's actually now 22.4 in the, excuse me, that's the Heart Solar is 22.4 in the,
Which do we get credit for?
and the
currently?
Savion is 23.5.
Do we get credit for 50% of what they're saying it's rated to produce, or do we
Yeah,
get?
the rated capacity is what you're getting 50% of.
All right.
Okay. Call the roll, please.
This is for the Savion, right? Director Crum?
Yes.
Director Kieft? Director Nasser?
Yes.
Director Witherell? Yes. And a second for that.
I'll make the motion.
Yep.
Director
Tom.
Crum?
Just a minute.
Oh.
Somebody give me a.
Okay.
Just to be clear here, this is the Heart Solar LLC for the 4.3 megawatts.
Right, yeah. Calhoun was the
I have
first
a
one.
comment also. I've been talking the last couple of nights with one of the city councilmen, and he asked me a question about our calculation of being 25% renewable by the end of 2024. And we clarified it last night, but we didn't have a chance. And I told them that I would get with staff this week and get an answer for them. So it has to do with what we published in the budget, and I didn't know the answer. So I will get with.
Okay, so here's what I think I emailed you back. You might not have seen it yet, and Ryan, and I basically told him that it is what we have produced publicly is what we're saying on our website and everywhere else is what we're saying is we will be at 25% at the end of calendar year 2022, at the end, right? So if you look at these resources right here, you can see their expected commercial operation date, and all of these units and two of them are actually coming online in the fourth quarter of 2022. So when all of those come online, which is the 2023 year, we're going to be at 26.3%. So that everything that we're saying at the end of 2022, we will be at 25%. Is entirely consistent with what we're putting out in this report, and it's entirely consistent with what we've said in every publication that I know of. So we're not. They are consistent, and that's exactly where we're intending to be. Now, I think what Ryan might be thinking is when I came back and said, when we got approved the Invenergy contract, I think actually when Invenergy comes online, we don't need Savion to be at 25%. So I think what I said to him at our meeting was this will bring us to 25%. The problem with that contract that was approved last year, it's not going to be operational till the end of next year. So that has to do with the delays and that are occurring regularly in these projects, and primarily it's in getting all of their necessary interconnection permits and all the other permits that are required. It takes them a bit more time, and I believe all of these are on track to meet their contract commercial operation dates. But if you remember what we had with Pegasus Wind is that was also delayed. That was also delayed quite a bit from what Pegasus originally, what NextEra originally told us would be with Pegasus, because they ran into permitting problems.
Are you being on? you laid all this out last time we met
Right.
on that form. So Jerry must not have gotten it. I mean,
Right, that sheet was included in our last
Right,
work session
yeah.
meeting. Yeah.
Other comments or questions? Please call the roll.
Director Crum,
Yes.
Director Kieft,
Yes.
Director Nasser,
Yes.
Director Witherell,
Yes.
Chairperson Smant.
Yes. Motion carries. We go to item number 6.
Okay, so I really don't have anything to add to these two pieces of documents, but I do want to announce them and that they are available for the public as well. Is in your packet, you have two, one is a legal opinion and one is an engineering recommendation or an assessment on the ability, and I think, John, you raised this question a couple months ago, is can we move forward with the proposed development of Harbor Island as we have it? I think these two, the legal opinion and the engineering assessment both verify that, yes, you can. I think one of the most important things is to read this, though, is to understand the due diligence that we were going to have to do to redevelop that property, and that any other person that develops on that site would need to do the same things. And the other thing is that it's very evident from reading these that this site will be restricted, all right? The only way that this site is not restricted in its development in some fashion is if we remove all of the contaminants. And we are not going to remove all the contaminants. So we've set our budget up substantially higher to remove more of the contaminants on the island, but all of the ash and trash will not be removed. And so these people that are suggesting that the BLP will remove all of the ash and trash and then turn the site over with a clean bill of health to someone else to build something else there are simply not, they're not operating in their realm of reality. There is absolutely no way that all of the material will be removed, all the contaminated materials will be removed from that site simply, and this is simply by knowing how the island was made. The island was made with ash and trash. So whatever island is left after we remediate it, and we're required to remediate it, we believe that this, and that's what Progressive A&E verified, is that this is the best use for the property. And other uses, are probably, first of all, not considered in this assessment. So what they're saying is that we can go forward with this development. All right, they feel confident that this development will be acceptable and that will be doable within, and we can actually start on it before all of our remediation is done. But the idea that some other development may or may not be acceptable is not in the cards, all right? I mean, this is particularly in the area where we're building, all right? Where we're putting the park or the wetlands area, there may be a potential in that area because there is not very much ash there and there's limited amount of trash, and we have to do some additional investigation there. But on our portion of the site where we're talking about building, we know there was ash underneath and that's what they talk about in these letters, is that there was ash underneath Sims Unit 3. And what we did is we dug down to the groundwater and took the ash out to the groundwater, and we hit trash. So there's trash underneath Unit 3. And we filled it back up with clean fill. So yes, we can build on it consistent with what these reports are saying, but there will be long-term monitoring likely of that site, long-term monitoring, regardless of whatever does. And the idea that someone else would be in charge of that long-term monitoring and remediation really kind of limits that use of that property to us or simply no development. And I think those are the only two choices that you have here. And I think the idea of no development, particularly in the northern half of the property, it might be limited as well. Simply because of, no development might mean a fence, all right? And that's what typically happens in these type of contaminated sites is they just fence it off. And so I think this idea that's being perpetuated around town is not consistent with the findings that we've made to date. Now, we may find that it's not as bad as they're suggesting, and that maybe, you know, some additional development could occur on the northern half of the property. But what they're saying, and this is what Progressive A&E has already said, is that the best use for that property is to maintain a utility use of it. And that use will be allowed with consistent with these environmental conditions that we found. And it looks like the park on the other half of the property is consistent as well. So I think that's what these are saying. I think they're written directly to address the situation. If we do decide to move forward and go to a bond sale, the bonding agents wanted us to receive some, and this came from our discussions with PFM and others, that you know, we should have some sort of letter that suggests, yes, you can go forward before the site is fully remediated. And that's what these two pieces of information are there to address. And with that, I encourage you, if you haven't read it yet, to read those two letters. I think it does explain the environmental contamination on the site. Again, probably consistent with what you've been given in the past, but I think it does give you a good feel for what we're proposing and its consistency with that, with the environmental contamination that will be left on the site.
Comments or questions? This is for information. I'll just say that that's one of the more easily read reports that I've watched. Both of them were not too much legalese, so they're very easy to understand.
And I think we will make these two documents public after today's meeting, so that anybody in the public that has not seen it yet, we will make these documents public for on our website at in some location.
Item number 7.
Okay, item number 7 is just an update on the 2021 series revenue bond issue and the band retirement. We have talked a bit more since our last meeting with financial advisors and with Huntington Bank. We are now in agreement with Huntington Bank that it is likely, well, it is for sure at this point in time, that we will go past our 1-year maturity date on the bands, which is, I believe it's July 30. It's July 30 or July, I believe it's July 30 is the maturity date on the bands. And then, which I think a couple weeks ago, I gave you all of the agreements and what happens during that. I think we're consistent with, at this point in time, we're not going to issue new bans. We're not going to, I think the best course of action at this point in time is just to use the term out provisions in that agreement, which basically say we start paying, they calculate 4 even payments on that ban. And the first payment is January 1 of 2022, 1/4 of the ban needs to be paid, or by that time we have to reissue debt and take them back. I think our goal at this point in time is to issue debt sometime later this year. And at this point in time, the recommendation from bond counsel is to go for a bond authorization resolution sometime before the bans expire. So in other words, you would authorize the bonds under certain conditions, probably before the bans expire, so that everyone knows exactly, when those, and then that bond authorization resolution would be in effect for, let's say, 4 or 5 months. When the right conditions arise that you're going to issue the debt, then you can pull the trigger without getting further approval from either the board or the council. I think that's what's being recommended at this point in time. We can talk about that more as we go forward, concerns with that or non-concerns. But I think that's the bottom line is the bans we're just going to use them as they were intended. The difference being is I think the interest rate goes from 1.65% on July 30 to 2.33%. As the LIBOR calculation is today, but they will calculate that what it actually is at that time. And then we actually pay interest monthly on that outstanding principal until the first payment, and then the interest payments are recalculated, and there's term out provisions in the agreement that I provided you. So I just wanted to update everybody on that. I think that's kind of where we're headed. So I think we are looking to a bond authorization sometime in the next few months, potentially July, maybe August. So, and maybe as early as June for the board, because we also have to bring that to city council.
Anyone have any further questions, comments? Then we're up to other business. You have anything else, Dave? Okay. Any other business from any of the board members? Motion to adjourn's in order.
Motion to adjourn?
All in favor? No, I guess you need a roll call. To adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Wow.